All right, today we're talking about a really crucial concept in the business world, the fiscal year end. Because you see, when it comes to business, the calendar doesn't always just end on December 31st.
So let me just ask you something. Does a business year always have to start in January? I mean, when we think of a year, we automatically think January 1st to December 31st, right? But is that a hard and fast rule for every company out there?
Well, for a whole lot of businesses, the answer is a big, resounding no. They operate on a completely different timeline, and that's exactly where this whole idea of the fiscal year comes into play.
Okay, so let's get into it. We're talking about a different kind of year, a 12-month period that, you guessed it, doesn't have to kick off on January 1st.
So, what is a fiscal year really? Well, to put it simply, it's just a 12-month accounting period that a business uses for all its financial reporting. Tracking income, expenses, the whole shebang. But here's the kicker. It can start in any month.
And because it's so flexible, a company's year could run from, say, April 1st to March 31st, or maybe July to June. Fun fact, the US government actually runs on a fiscal year from October to September. It's all about picking a cycle that just makes sense for how that specific organization works.
All right, so let's really dig into the difference here. Fiscal year versus calendar year. What's the key distinction?
Okay, so on one side, you've got the good old calendar year. It's fixed, right? January 1st to December 31st. That's what most of us use for our personal taxes. But then you have the fiscal year, and it's all about flexibility. It's a tool that's actually designed to match the real-world rhythm of a business. That's why it's the go-to for corporations and nonprofits. To really get this, let's use an example. Think about a ski resort. For them, timing is absolutely everything. Their busiest season, where they make almost all their money, is winter. So, with that in mind, does it make any sense for them to shut everything down to close their books on December 31st? No way! That's smack in the middle of their peak season, the holiday rush. It's their most chaotic time of year. It would be a nightmare, right? Instead, a year-end on, let's say, September 30th? Now that makes a ton of sense. The busy winter season is long over. It gives them a nice, quiet off-season to get all their accounting organized. And the best part, it lets them look at a complete full season's performance without interruption. Okay, which brings us to the big question. What's the purpose of a year-end anyway? Why does any of this even matter for a business? Well, it really all boils down to a fundamental idea in accounting called the time period principle. Basically, it just says that to understand how a business is doing, you have to slice its financial life into equal, consistent chunks of time. It's how you measure progress, plain and simple. And that fiscal year end, it does a few really critical jobs. First, it gives you that consistent finish line, so you can measure your performance this year against last year. It also sets a hard deadline for putting together those official financial statements that, investors and banks need to see. And of course, it's absolutely essential for filing taxes and meeting legal rules. Plus, all that data is what you use for budgeting and planning for the future. All right, so who gets to choose their own calendar, and how do they do it? Let's get into the who and the how. So who can actually use a fiscal year? Well, typically we're talking about corporations, partnerships, and nonprofits or charities. It's especially useful for seasonal businesses, like that ski resort we were just talking about. But here's an important note. For most of us, as individuals, we're pretty much stuck with a regular calendar year for our taxes.
Okay, so we've been saying a fiscal year is a 12-month period, but is that always true? Are there ever exceptions, like can it be shorter?
And the answer is yes, but only in a few very specific cases. It's called a short fiscal period. This can happen when a brand new business starts up mid-year, or maybe if a business decides to change its year-end date, or, if a business has to shut down early. So how do you actually pick the right year-end? It's not random. It's a really strategic decision. First, you've got to analyze your business's natural rhythm, its seasonality, just like the ski resort. Then, it's a good idea to see what's common in your industry. It makes comparing yourself to competitors way easier. You also have to think about tax planning opportunities. And finally, you have to consider simple administrative convenience. You don't want your year-end to land when your entire team is overwhelmed or on vacation. And that brings us to our final takeaway. Think of it this way: your year, your strategy. Because as we've seen, this is about so much more than just circling a date on the calendar. It's a real strategic move. At the end of the day, picking the right year-end is a pretty big business decision. When you choose wisely, it has a direct impact on how efficient your operations are and how clear your company's financial story is. And trust me, that's a story that investors and lenders are reading very, very carefully.
Just think about the ripple effect. A smart choice leads to more accurate financial statements, which gives investors more confidence. It means the workload for your accounting team is way more manageable, which means less burnout and fewer mistakes. It can even make things like counting inventory more efficient. And all of that, it adds up to better, smarter cash flow planning for the future.
So, what's the bottom line? A fiscal year is so much more than just a date on a calendar. It's the actual tool, the framework, that defines how a business measures its own success. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. Is a financial calendar just another deadline you have to meet? Or is it a strategic tool that can be used to build a smarter, more efficient organization?